$9.99.
Cash, as opposed to a check or a wire transfer, has made this into a news story. You know, maybe because it kind of feels like some spy novel or, some, crime novel, because cash was exchanged. The reason cash was exchanged is because we don't have a banking relationship with Iran, which is precisely part of the pressure that we were able to apply to them.
President Obama today. Let's talk more about what President Obama had to say, especially about that Iran deal, $400 million in cash. Today, after his National Security Council meeting at the Pentagon and the Defense Secretary's comments to me earlier. Syndicated columnist Charles Krauthammer is here tonight. Charles, as the president is saying that, what he just said about this $400 million taken by an unmarked cargo plane into Tehran, as the hostages were getting ready to leave, one of the hostages on Fox Business Today said that they were stuck on the tarmac for about 2 hours. And they asked what the delay was, and he said, because we had to wait for another plane to land.
Because they had to wait for the ransom to arrive. That's what happens when you ransom a hostage. You wait until the cash arrives, and then the guy in all the movies is released to go across, the field where he's being released. Look, for them to try to pretend this was anything other than a ransom is laughable, and I think it hurts their credibility. You can argue it was the only way. You can argue we were in negotiations and we thought, what the heck, if we're going to give them $150 billion elsewhere, why not 1.7? It's not a lot. And then the president's a defense of the use of cash, as if this is, we couldn't wire the money. Well, why couldn't you wire it? He said because of sanctions. Well, that means because they were actually going around the law, going around sanctions, and they had to do it illicitly, clandestinely, at night, the way it's done by gangsters. That's because they were doing ransom. They didn't want anyone to know, and they had to go around the law. And the Congress didn't know. No, this is not old news. New news, and it's highly embarrassing. And the president, I have to admit, he's rather good with words. He made it sound like this was just completely natural.
And at the same time, you heard from Secretary Carter really how aggressive Iran has been, not only in still holding American hostages, but firing ballistic missiles against the UN treaties, and essentially funding terrorist operations across the Middle East.
What he's doing is he's sort of echoing the fundamental critique of Obama's Iraq policy. Yes, you can argue that the agreement is held. It's been less than a year. There's no overt breakout. But the premise of the whole thing was Obama was going to redo relations with Iran. This is going to be his Nixon in China. He was going to engage. The moderates are going to take over. There are no moderates. They're all radicals, they're all anti-American, they're all devoted to injuring us and destroying our enemies. And that's why there's been no change in behavior, and that undermines the whole premise of the negotiations. Iran, in a year or two, a few more perhaps, will be a scot-free nuclear power with the same ideology and the same anti-Americanism.
ISIS is expanding. 30 affiliates, 24 countries, 5 aspirational places. Can the U.S. go after ISIS effectively in the Middle East and not affect the balance of power with Iran in that same area, the hegemony that we've seen from Iran?
Well, because of the disastrous evacuation from Iraq, at a point where Obama himself said Iraq was stable and independent and had a chance to succeed. Because of that, anything that we do to kick ISIS out of Iraq, to weaken ISIS, to actually attack the Sunnis who are supporting ISIS, is necessarily a gain for Iran. Iran is now the dominant power in Iraq as a result of our withdrawal. That would not have happened had Obama not made this terrible decision in 2011. So we have to choose our poisons right now. The more immediate one is ISIS. But the long-range consequences are, as you suggest, that Iran will become the dominant power even more than it is today, and will have undone everything that we did in Iraq in those terrible years where we actually won the war, ending with the surge.
Charles, as always, thank you. Should scientists be allowed to grow a human organ inside an animal?